let's see, or it could be 11, but I think more it's either 20 or 21.
Bhante, I have a question about the difference between karma and causality, or if there is one. For instance, you mentioned the example of a mosquito.
Yeah.
And, maybe one could say, well, if you choose to be in a place where there are mosquitoes, and then you leave your arm bare, and there's a mosquito in your room, then, well, there it is. But is that describing karma or just causality, or is there a difference?
Let's say karma is one particular order of causality. Like there are different layers or different orders or dimensions of causality. So, if I throw a ball against the wall and the wall bounces off the wall, that is a kind of causality. It's not karma. Of course, in my throwing the ball, that's an act of volition. But the fact that the ball will bounce off the wall, that's not a karmic result. That is just an event that's due to the laws of physics. In fact, like the commentaries distinguish 5 orders of causality. One is called the order of pure physical causality. If rain falls on the top of a mountain, it's going to flow downwards. If the temperature gets hot, water will evaporate. So all of those are physical events, causal events, but they're not due to karma. A second order of causality is, call it the order of biological causality. So, simple example, if you plant orange seeds, you get orange trees. If you plant apple seeds, you get apple trees. If the more complex, if you have particular genetic makeup and 2 people with different genetic makeups unite, then the child will inherit the genome of the 2 parents in some combination. So that's purely biological causality. Another is the order of purely psychological causality. Different psychological factors will cause different psychological states to arise. So that's an order of causality. It's not necessarily karmic. Then there's the level of what is called dharmata causality. This would be maybe the links of dependent origination, the connection between them, the fact that all conditioned things are impermanent, all conditioned things are bound up with dukkha, everything is not self. This is purely dharma causality. So karma causality is the order of causality according to which, as I said, our volitional actions come back to us in some way that reflects the moral nature of the volition behind the original action. So taking the case of somebody who goes into an area infested with mosquitoes and he gets bitten by mosquitoes, that's not necessarily the result of karma. Though it could be, this is looking at it from a micro level, that of course going into the mosquito infested area exposes a person to mosquitoes, but one could say that, perhaps looking at it with a very sharp divine eye, one could say that the person getting bitten by so many mosquitoes, that is happening because of some unwholesome action he performed in a past life. Perhaps, it's still questionable to me whether every case like that could be explained on the basis of karma. But it could be that karma might be a factor in cases like that. I would say, well, the mosquito would be exercising a volitional action and choosing to bite the person.
May I ask one more question?
Yeah.
I sometimes have sort of problems with karma because it seems like it's so easy to fall into wrong view.
Yeah.
Because, of course, we know Venerable Ananda was admonished by the Buddha for saying he kind of understood karma well.
Well, that was dependent origination.
Oh, I'm sorry. But, okay, I guess I sort of conflate those things a little bit in my mind. But it seems like since karma is so hard to really understand if you're just a regular person, and so easy to kind of point to things and say, oh, that's karma. I guess my question is sort of how useful is it to try to parse out for oneself karma as opposed to just trying to do good things? But I don't really know how to phrase the question, but it seems like the act of thinking about karma or trying to understand karma is sort of unwholesome in the sense that it often results in clinging to wrong view.
Well, in fact, the Buddha, there's a little sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya where the Buddha says, he speaks about 4 things that can, if a person tries to figure them out conceptually, they'll drive a person mad. And one of them is the working of karma and its fruit. Right, so, I look at, or I would say that when thinking about karma, I would say we have to just think about it in a practical sense, not try to figure out all of the details of the workings of karma, or whether this event or that event is due to karma. But the points I explained, that understanding that karma is volition, our intentions, our volitions, which come from our choices, that we can understand that the choices we make can be unwholesome or wholesome, depending on what underlies them, the motives, whether greed, hate, delusion, or any of the associated defilements, or non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion, or any of the associated virtuous qualities. And then the Buddha has given, again and again, at least a template of a basic list of unwholesome karmas and wholesome karmas. So the unwholesome karmas, we have the 10 unwholesome deeds of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, false speech, divisive speech, harsh speech, idle chatter, covetousness, ill will, and wrong view. And then we have the 10 wholesome karmas, opposite to that. And you find those Majjhima Nikaya number 41, well elaborated in Majjhima Nikaya number 41, and then number of suttas in the Anguttara Nikaya elaborate on them. So we can see that this is the basic scheme, and also actions that are similar to those in the basic scheme. We could understand unwholesome and what is wholesome. And that, for me, that's sufficient. If somebody wants to figure it all out, go ahead. I don't find that necessary.
Yeah, Bhante, in regards to your previous comment, what is the sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya where he talks about the 4 things
About the 4
things that
will drive a person mad?
Yeah. Do you know which one that is?
It's in the Book of Fours. Somehow the number 77 just pops into my mind. But I'm not saying that I remember that it's 77. It could be completely off, but just the number 77 pops up.
Okay, I'll try it.
But it's called, I think I translated it as inconceivable things. So if you look in the index for inconceivable things, you'll find you can start with 77. Nobody has the Anguttara Nikaya with them? Oh, wow.
So, Bhante, I was wondering if you could even talk about the role of meditation and how it helps in, lessening the effect of karma, or, basically everybody struggles with how to lessen the effect of karma or create good karma. So how does meditation help in all that?
Okay, I mean, this is a very big topic. We could almost give like a seminar on the topic.
Okay.
But to put it concisely and briefly, first, meditation itself is a wholesome, very powerful, wholesome form of karma. Because what one is doing in meditation, if one is practicing properly, is working to diminish the impact of unwholesome mental qualities and to develop wholesome mental qualities. In fact, the Pali word that's usually rendered as meditation in English is bhavana, which means development or cultivation. And so by practicing meditation, one is developing energy applied to the wholesome, one is strengthening mindfulness, concentration, insight, calming the mind. And at the time one is developing meditation, there's no greed. Of course, thoughts of greed, thoughts of hatred might arise, but one is not letting oneself be driven by them. But one is just observing them and then letting them go their way. And that's gradually, it's weakening the impact of greed, hatred, and delusion. And then, through the practice of meditation, one is learning to become more mindful. And so that makes one more sensitive to one's states of mind. So people ordinarily engage in all sorts of unwholesomeness because they're not aware. They're almost acting like automatons, just driven by this impulse comes, I act on it. That desire comes, I act on it. I get angry, I express it. But now through meditation we're learning just, to see what's going on in the mind and to let the mental states just come, recognize them when they're present, and go their own way. And so that is weakening their impact, so they're not driving our behavior. And then as the wholesome states get cultivated repeatedly on occasion after occasion, then they come to replace the unwholesome. So that tendencies that we might have had like years ago, like I used to get really angry very easily. Sometimes even to the point where explosive anger. Now I hardly get angry at all. Don't test me. Did you find that sutta? 77! Wow! No, but I didn't make any attempt to think, what is that sutta, to come up with it must be this one. Just, she asked, he asked me, okay, the question, and then just that number came into my mind. What is that? A lottery number. I have. No, but let's see. Recently, somebody did ask a question relating to that sutta, not in the class. So it's not that it's suddenly miraculously. It could have been about a week ago. Somebody asked me a question about that sutta. And so that would explain why the number 77 was there. Though I didn't make an attempt to memorize it. Excuse me? Law of coincidences. Okay, Debbie.
Yes, Bhante, I have a question about the use of the words inferior and superior human beings, and I'm wondering if this is in the sense of fortunate and unfortunate, or more suffering and less suffering.
Does it say inferior, superior human beings?
Yes.
I see. Why human beings are seen to be
inferior and superior. So if you could talk about that a little bit.
Well, this is, it's not saying that human beings are intrinsically inferior or superior, but let's say the conditions of human beings are inferior or superior, in that having a long lifespan, good health. See some of the others. I'm a little reluctant to say this, but being wealthy, being in a position of power or influence, Well, these are the things that really cause my mind, the scratches in my mind. I mean, we're in the United States, where we have 40 or 50 people virtually controlling the electoral process. Is that because of their wholesome karma in the past? I don't know. Okay, but these are considered like superior conditions. Then the inferior conditions would be having a short lifespan, poor health, being born into low-class families. This is, again, against the backdrop of the Indian class structure or caste structure. Being poor, being uninfluential, just like one vote rather than being able to influence elections with millions of dollars. Yeah, so that's the basis for the distinction.
I'm relieved to hear it's the conditions of the human beings and not the human beings themselves that are inferior. I'm relieved to learn it is the conditions of the human beings and not the human beings themselves that are seen as inferior or superior.
And Buddhism doesn't make these kind of blanket generalizations about human beings themselves. But they will say, the text will say that human beings have superior faculties and inferior faculties, which is relating to, call the context of spiritual development, like those who have cultivated over, many years, especially many lives. The Buddha says those are ones who are apropriate indriya, that the faculties are superior if they've developed their energy, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom over a long period, and those who have low energy, poor mindfulness, poor concentration, poor understanding, inferior faculties. But people can always, because of the law of impermanence and the principle of cultivation, one can always change through effort.
Bhante, I thought to be reborn into the heavenly world, one needs to cultivate meditation. But according to the sutra, it seems to me wholesome deeds, wholesome karma.
For rebirth in the heavenly world.
Yeah. Is meditation necessary?
In the Buddhist cosmology, the heavenly realms are divided into 3 layers, according to the 3 realms. So there are the sense sphere heavenly realms, the form realms, which are the Brahma world, and then there is the formless heavenly realms, the formless divine realms. Okay, to be reborn in the sense sphere heavenly world, meditation is not necessary, though if one develops meditation, then of course one is strengthening wholesome qualities, so that will facilitate one's ability to gain reborn in the heavenly worlds. But the essential conditions for rebirth in the sense sphere heavens would be the practice of generosity and morality. Though if one does develop meditation, particularly from a Buddhist framework, the devotional meditations, like the 3 recollection of the 3 jewels and the 4 divine abodes, those will tend to lead to a heavenly rebirth, providing those meditations providing that they don't bring the full attainment of jhana. Okay, to get reborn in the form realm heavens, or the Brahma realms, one has to develop meditation. One has to develop samatha, tranquility meditation, the jhanas, because those divine realms are sort of the counterpart to the mental states that are experienced within the jhanas. So in order to sort of break through the barrier that separates the sense sphere from the form realm, one has to develop a kind of consciousness that is typical of life the beings in the form realm. And that kind of consciousness is the samadhi of the jhanas. Okay, then beyond the form realm is the formless or immaterial realm. The four planes, base of infinite space, base of infinite consciousness, base of nothingness, base of neither perception nor non-perception. So in order to get reborn in those realms, one has to develop samadhi to the level of the formless jhanas, the formless absorptions. So it's those meditations which are actually creating the karma that leads to rebirth into those realms.
Monte, on that note, I don't think how do you do good deeds without the meditation? Because it's not like we inherently know, do we? Or isn't there some kind of contemplation involved Isn't there some kind of contemplation involved in that? And isn't that the meditation in and of itself?
I think not necessarily. If one takes meditation to be like formally sitting and attending to a particular object, but people will practice generosity. They'll have, maybe through natural disposition, kind and compassionate temperament, and they'll do things which are beneficial to a lot of people, and just either naturally or through following a particular ethical code, they'll live a moral way of life. So there are many people, whether Buddhist, non-Buddhist, who observe, who are generous, kind, have kind dispositions, and lead moral way of life without formally sitting in meditation.
But what I meant was karma is determined by our will, our volition.
Yeah.
So being mindful of the results of our...
Yeah.
That is meditation.
Okay, if you extend the word meditation in that sense, then you could say that even practicing generosity or observing the precepts is a form of meditation. Right. But I'm thinking of meditation in the sense of closing off attention to sense objects and focusing the mind on a particular object of contemplation.
And this might be a bit broad for to ask today, but you mentioned dependent origination, and I was just wondering where in that does the karma, is it the karma in the beginning? How, or is it in each phase that karma is being generated?
You mean within the formula of dependent origination? Well, particularly the second factor of dependent origination, this is what's called sankharas. Sankhara is, I would render it, volitional activity. So it's the sankharas that are conditioned by ignorance that create the karma that generates consciousness, and that consciousness is the consciousness arisen through the fruition of the karma. But we'll explain if you come to the Abhidhamma retreat. I'm going to explain dependent origination. Maybe we move to Madison Square Garden this year.
I believe that we had a sutta not too long ago regarding the matter where the Buddha explains that by being kind, you can't actually be reborn in the heavenly world, but it's didn't explain by meditation. He just meant to be kind and this. Of course, and giving, but it never explains that you have to meditate only. It explains in your daily life how you live.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this is like most of the discourses which are dealing with rebirth in the heavenly realm, understood as the sixth, as the sense sphere heavens, just explain in terms of observing or practicing either giving and morality.
Right.
or sometimes more elaborately following the 10 paths of wholesome karma. Usually the explanation doesn't bring in the deliberate practice of meditation, what we would call sitting meditation.
I was example more like Mother Teresa. I mean, I'm sure she didn't practice. I don't know, maybe she meditated, but she wasn't a Buddhist, of course. And I remember reading a book, and she stated that.
Reading who?
I read a book about a father from the Vatican, was really close to her. She sent letters to the Vatican, a father, and he stated that she mentioned that she questioned God. And if there's no God, there's no soul, there's no self. In other words, she was questioning that because since she was not practicing meditation, she was seeing the self. And I guess through that practice, she realized that there is no self, there's no God. So she started questioning those in those letters. So getting back to the point of charity and goodwill is that she did a lot of great things. Yeah, she didn't advance in a meditative state or even found that there's no self. Yet, I'm sure she's going to be reborn in the heavenly, in heavenly realm.
Yeah.
I think.
I think that's likely. But she must have been practicing some form of what they call contemplative prayer, which is really
samadhi, right?
We would call it a form of meditation. It's not praying, give me this, give me that, but it's just trying to establish a contact or communion with God. And so it's a form of, we would look at it as a form of meditation.
That is true. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, if there's one more, we'll take one more question.
So, just from my experience, since I'm very new to Buddhism, this is just my interpretation, that you can still be in a meditative state. You could be in a meditative state without being in meditation. You could still kind of be in that wholesome place even without just sitting and being still. Like, I feel that I can be in that state for a good amount of time, and I'm blessed that I'm able to feel that. So since this is new to me, I'm questioning, like, is this normal? Is this not normal? Like, for me, I feel like in my every thought and my action, I do try and be loving and compassionate and be in a certain way.
Actually, as I said, what we call in English meditation is in Pali, Sanskrit, bhavana, which means development.
Yes.
So one can be developing the wholesome mind in any state.
Any state. Right.
Yeah. So if one uses the word meditation in that broad way, then one could be doing meditation in any activity.
Right, that's what I'm noticing.
Yeah, but often we use the word meditation in a narrower sense of taking a particular fixed object, sitting either cross-legged or sitting in a fixed position, taking a specific object, and then making the attempt to keep the mind focused on that object.
Okay. So, I feel like I'm doing that even without sitting and meditating. I'm just naturally doing it, and I'm like, oh, okay, I could kind of relate to it because I'm doing it naturally. And I never understood why.
I think it's pretty hard to keep the mind focused on one object when one is engaged in the midst of activity.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But then what one is advised to do is to use, we call it mindfulness and clear comprehension, which means one is aware of what one is doing, that's mindfulness, and one knows what one is doing, why one is doing, how one is doing it, that's clear comprehension.
Right. Okay.
Okay, Jane? Yeah. Way in the back.
About meditation, does it make a difference if there are a lot of people in sitting and meditating at once? Does it make a difference in sort of the general feeling in the room, sort of the vibration level? If there are a lot of people meditating as against 1?
There's nothing in the text about that, but my experience is that it creates a stronger vibrational atmosphere in the room.
That was my feeling too.
Yeah.
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 So thank you.
Yeah, but there seems to be that because at the level below the level of visibility, the people who are all together in the room sort of making the same effort to focus the mind, it changes the spiritual vibrations in the room.
It does. That was my very strong feeling the last time.
Yeah.
Last
I mean,
Saturday.
this sounds like 1960s hippie terminology.
It does. I felt like my old hippie self. Thank you.
But you got cool vibes, man. Yeah. Beautiful vibes, man. Excuse me? Okay. Vibhanga means analysis. Okay, so let us then end for the day. We could end with 3 half bows to the Buddha. And next week we'll come back and take the rest of the sutta, which might generate a little controversy. I think the Koch brothers like that part of the sutta, and